Hat, sunglasses, Pepsi, notes, sources, thick skin, check. You already know. Let's go. Welcome to Golden Blue today, everybody. This is a college football channel. So if you like college football, hit the like and subscribe button. It's that simple. Also, send gear to represent your team and be a part of my background forever. All you have to do is send it to P.O. Box 360, Liberty, South Carolina 29657. It is Thanksgiving week, so happy Thanksgiving to everybody. And you know what that means. It's the last week of the regular season of college football. Where does the time go? This time of year goes by faster than any other time of year. Every year it seems like the college football season goes faster and faster, and this year was by far the fastest for me. I don't know about you. But this is where things get really, really interesting, and chaos seems to pop its head up right around towards the end of the year. And last week, chaos did happen. And more chaos could have happened, but other teams held on. I mean, we had number 1 Georgia going on the road to Kentucky and basically surviving 16-6. Georgia couldn't really put any points on the board, but they put up enough points to beat Kentucky. They survived, stay undefeated, probably will be the new number 1 team in the new playoff rankings. Then there was number 3 Michigan. They also survived Illinois at home. Basically, a last-minute field goal saves their hide. They win 19-17, so they're still undefeated going into their rivalry match against Ohio State. Ohio State did have a little bit of issues with Maryland, but they ended up pulling away and winning 43-30. There's number 4 TCU over Baylor. Not a walk-off field goal, but a run-off field goal against Baylor. They do win 29-28, but what a scare for TCU. Didn't think that they would get their field goal team on the field on time to get the kick off. Not only did they get there on time, but the kicker nailed it. TCU stays undefeated. Number 7 USC survives number 16 UCLA 48-45. That could have hurt the Pac-12's chances of getting to the playoffs tremendously unless UCLA could finish with 1 loss and win the Pac-12 championship. Number 10 Utah was basically knocked out of Pac-12 championship contention. They lost on the road to number 12 Oregon 20-17. That was a good game. Georgia Tech. They go on the road and beat number 13 North Carolina 21-17. And Georgia Tech is 1 game away from becoming bowl eligible. I will get to that game here in a minute. Then, of course, Ole Miss, the most overrated team of the entire year, loses on the road 42-27. And Ole Miss does not deserve to be a top 15 team. That stretch where they were ranked in the top 10, I was shaking my head. But, hey, they did stay undefeated even though their schedule was cake. Once they hit the tough part of their schedule, yeah, they caved. 3 losses in a very short time, so Ole Miss is definitely out of contention. And, of course, the biggest upset of the year, in my opinion, South Carolina beats number 5 Tennessee 63-38. You talk about shaking up the playoff picture, that did it right there. I thought Tennessee, if they just won out, they were getting into the playoffs, that they didn't need any help, because the playoff committee valued them so much it didn't matter. If they just won out, they're in the playoffs. But no, Tennessee is not a lock because they go on the road and they lose to South Carolina. So close, Tennessee. You were so close to making the playoffs. What happened? What about this week's games? There is a big potential for chaos. Massive potential. And it starts on Friday. The top 2 AAC teams will go head-to-head. Number 21 Tulane on the road to number 25 Cincinnati. Both of these teams are 9-2. Both of these teams trying to get to the AAC championship. And it might be a rematch between these 2 teams because UCF did lose to Navy this past week. That was another little smidge of chaos. So these 2 teams are fighting for that New Year's 6 bowl bid for the highest ranked group of 5 champions. So good luck to you. Then there's that game that I was talking about earlier. Georgia Tech and number 1 Georgia. Can Georgia Tech do it 2 weeks in a row, but this time it would be a monumental upset. Georgia Tech is a 35.5 point underdog. They're 5-6, one game away from getting to a bowl. Georgia, of course, 11-0, trying to get to the playoffs and win a back-to-back national championship. I don't think there's any chance whatsoever of Georgia Tech going on the road and beating Georgia. But man, if that were to happen, you talk about chaos, that would be top-notch chaos. That would be 2007 chaos right there. I don't think it's going to happen though. The next game is number 3 Michigan at number 2 Ohio State. Both of these teams undefeated. Everybody expects Ohio State to win this game. And Ohio State is favored by 7.5. But Michigan could go on the road and upset Ohio State. Michigan is a good team. I just don't think they're good enough to go on the road and beat a really good Ohio State. But stranger things have happened. So that would be small chaos. Not a big one, but small. What about number 18 Notre Dame at number number 7, USC. Notre Dame looks really, really good recently, including a win over an undefeated top 4 Clemson, absolutely smashing them. Then they just beat Boston College 44-0. USC did go on the road and took care of business against UCLA, but USC has shown they have some weaknesses. Notre Dame could, in fact, go on the road and beat USC. USC is a 5.5-point favorite. If this was in South Bend, Notre Dame might actually be the favorite. The Pac-12 is on pins and needles hoping that USC comes through and beats Notre Dame because the Pac-12 needs USC to finish the regular season with 1 loss and win the Pac-12 championship if the Pac-12 wants any hope of getting into the playoffs. Notre Dame could most definitely spoil the party, and I put this at significant chaos if this happens. Notre Dame could definitely affect the playoff party and crash the playoff party, knock the Pac-12 straight up out of the playoff party. And I think Notre Dame has a pretty good chance of doing this. Next up, number 12, Oregon at number 23, Oregon State. Oregon 9-2, Oregon State 8-3. Oregon just a 3-point favorite. I think Oregon State will beat Oregon. Oregon State is a better team than people realize, and they could straight up knock Oregon out of the Pac-12 championship game, depending on what happens with UCLA and Utah. So this is a tough game for Oregon. They need to win this game to get the Pac-12 championship and probably play USC. What about the Iron Bowl? Auburn at number 8, Alabama. Auburn trying to get to a bowl. They're 5-6. Alabama trying to somehow stay in playoff contention. Alabama a 22-point favorite. That's a tremendous point spread for a rivalry game. And Alabama could still make the playoffs, but only if a lot of chaos happens around them. They need chaos to happen this week, and they need chaos to happen during championship week. First things first, don't get upset by Auburn. Then there's number 6, LSU at Texas A&M. LSU also in playoff contention. LSU 9-2, Texas A&M 4-7. LSU a 10-point favorite in this. LSU's going to the SEC championship no matter what. If they lose this game and win the SEC championship as a 3-loss team, does LSU get into the playoffs? I think if they win as a 2-loss champion, they get in. But as a 3-loss champion, come on. I don't know about that. That'd be crazy. So this is an important game for the SEC. Just in case LSU does beat Georgia in the SEC championship. Then there's Iowa State at number 4, TCU. Iowa State is a bad team. They're 4-7. TCU is 11-0, but they're only a 10-point favorite. What does Vegas know that the rest of us doesn't know? Because whenever I see one of these weird point spreads, I'm like, that's crazy. Why would anybody take the points or even pick Iowa State? Usually it's at least closer than people realize, or the upset happens. So keep your eyes on that Iowa State at TCU. That would most definitely shake up playoff picture. I think TCU needs to run the table, go undefeated, and win the Big 12 championship in order to get to the playoffs. On the other hand, a 2-loss SEC LSU can make the playoffs. Yeah, I'll talk about fairness for the playoff committee. Then there's the last one, and I'm especially keeping my eyes on this one. South Carolina at number 9, Clemson. South Carolina 7-4, Clemson 10-1. South Carolina last week absolutely blistered Tennessee 63-38. Could they do it 2 weeks in a row? Clemson is a 14.5-point favorite. If South Carolina does go on the road and beat Clemson, there go the hopes of the ACC getting into the playoffs, because remember, North Carolina got beat by Georgia Tech last week. They're headed to the ACC championship as a 2-loss team. If Clemson gets beat by South Carolina, they would be headed to the ACC championship as a 2-loss team, and the ACC would be left out. So South Carolina has a major opportunity to not only play spoiler, but to shake up the playoff picture tremendously, because I still think Clemson has a legitimate shot to get into the playoffs. They do need a couple of things to happen that are outside of their control, but those things aren't out of the realm of possibility. I mean, for TCU to lose in the Big 12 championship, that's not a stretch of the imagination. And for USC to lose one of their last 2 games, either the home game against Notre Dame or the Pac-12 championship game, that's not a stretch of the imagination either. So Clemson does have a legitimate shot to make the playoffs. But South Carolina could crash their party and could crash the playoffs straight up. So y'all let me know in the comments section, out of all these games, where do you think chaos is most likely to strike this weekend? That's all I got for this show. Like and subscribe if you haven't already, and I'll see you on my next show.